Okay, now every single episode, we usually get into the specifics, and I mean, pretty much. I mean, we these are like 2+ hours long, but I do want to put on a long story short here. And what I've learned from this series is that I probably have more of an emotional attachment to Grimace than any of these players. Okay, and in fact, to be honest, there we go. Now now I'm more comfortable. You know what I mean? And now I feel safe. Okay. For those of you who are listening on audio, I just put a picture of Grimace on the face on the screen for everybody to look at because to be honest, that's the only safe space here, to be honest. Mets Weekly Podcast, number 57, Mets Marlins series recap live at this very moment on YouTube and on X. Let's get this one started. Roll the intro. Okay, so as for our usual house cleaning, we got to do it every single time. I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. For this very podcast that is now recorded live Sundays and on Thursdays, following every single series of games. Now, today is Friday because the schedule kind of threw us off a little bit, but we are kind of working through it here. But regularly it is Sundays and Thursdays. For those of you watching on playback later on in the day, not at this current moment, and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to not miss any time that we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, I want to let you know that we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. But if you feel like you're being ignored, you are not. They're just being starred throughout the show. So we can pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation. Also, remember to follow the Mets Weekly Twitter and us on TikTok. And that pretty much features Frank's instant reactions after every single Mets game, which is titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. Once again, no matter how bad the team is. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of this episode that goes up not at 9 a.m. on Mondays and Fridays. It will be Saturday this time. Once again, we're talking about doing this on Friday, so the following day it will be Sunday. So we just had to make that adjustment, obviously, with the schedule kind of being pushed off an extra day with the London series, and stuff like this happens. So we're here on Friday, not a regular day that we're on here, but we're here to talk about some Mets baseball coming off of a Mets and Marlins series. Now, Frank, they got the series win, but there is still a lot to uncover in terms of the team that they were playing and the position that they are in right now, which is 7 games under 500.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the big takeaway. It's just that Miami really stinks. I mean, like we've talked a lot about like how much the Mets have struggled. Yes, 7 games under 500, but when we look at the Marlins, I mean, they're just really, really struggling. They're even in a worse situation than the Mets, and it makes sense. I mean, the expectations with these teams are drastically different. They made the Luis Arias trade very early on the season. Like they were fully aware, like we're not trying this year. We're gonna move Luis Arias and just kind of whatever. So I just feel like Mets kind of benefit from that, particularly with the infield defense of Miami. Like in that 10-run game, like yes, there were some nice home runs and what have you, but a lot of it is just like hit a ground ball to third base, the guy doesn't catch it. Hit a ball to second base, the guy, it just goes right under his legs. Hit a ball on the ground to the left side, the guy picks it up and then just drops it. Like they just like we talk about the Mets infield defense struggling, but oh my gosh, it was really rough to watch. Jazz is not a center fielder. I kind of feel bad for him, honestly. Like he's just there by default, and he just misplays a lot of balls in front of him. So that's kind of frustrating to watch a talented player like that. But still, I think that for the Mets, the offense is still really where I'm concerned. Jesus Luzardo, we've talked a lot about him on this show, and like he has potential, like he has upside, but he hasn't been great this year. But you wouldn't know it based off his two starts against the Mets. I mean, like if the way he pitched against the Mets, he did that all the time, he'd be having an all-star year. But it's far too often, and even yesterday's game against Munoz, like they're going up against all these pitchers who have ERAs over 5, but it doesn't seem like that with how much of a struggle it is for them to score. And you know what? Is it the home field being in Citi Field? Is it the hitting coach? Is it McNeil? I mean, it's a combination of things, but it's still just very frustrating when you're facing a guy like Munoz and you're getting no hit going into like the 6th inning. That was embarrassing. I mean, JD Martinez really bailed them out from having a very ugly series loss. And, when you're so far behind and you're trying to get back in the race and get in front of all these teams, you just need to win games. You know what I mean? So, all in all, like, yes, they did get a win, but if you're going to actually make the jump and get back in it, you got to be playing overall better than this because, JD Martinez could only bail you out so often. The bad Miami defense can only bail you out so often. So there's still a lot of things that need to be corrected in order to make, like we call, sustainable winning. That's still not there yet. So, I mean, there's still a lot of things that have to change.
I mean, we obviously know that the Mets have a lot of teams ahead of them right now, but they're only 3 games out of the last wild card spot, and they're 7 games below 500. They've been playing better baseball in terms of record. But again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And listen, I like to just keep it, straightforward here. They won back-to-back games. They're 2-0 in the Grimace era, whatever you want to say. But the problem here is that you're facing a Marlins team that sucks. They don't only suck, they are possibly like the bottom of the barrel of the bottom of the barrel. That's how bad that Marlins team is. And to be honest, I really watched this game and it really just felt like the Mets were just playing themselves. Like literally it felt like a carbon copy of the Mets, maybe a little bit younger, obviously, because the Marlins are a little bit younger. And that's literally like, it's just like they can't really piece together anything good from all sides of the ball in one game. And it just constantly looks like a discombobulated series. I mean, it's the fact that the Mets, I mean, it's just really continued to be, the putting the pressure on the defense, and that's been kind of the Mets' main source of offense, especially with their main sources of offense is kind of underperforming all year. It really bleeds through as to where you have a lot of consistency issues with this team. And I continue to say this in terms of the offense. It's the same offensive approach from 2022 that everybody loved so much. It's putting the ball in play, waiting for the defense to screw up. You're not running the bases. You're station to station, and you're literally just waiting for Alonso and Lindor to bail you out. And since they haven't really been doing that well this year, your offense has continued to be inconsistent. Now, JD Martinez, we never had really a professional hitter like him on that 2022 team. There wasn't any, inconsistencies, but he's also 36 as well. So there could be a slowdown in production from him. He hasn't been amazing. He has been somewhat underwhelming, but he's still been a productive hitter for this team. And it shows that maybe the Mets probably should have got him 2 years ago. Maybe they should have got him a year ago, maybe 3 years ago. Maybe they should have signed him before the Red Sox even got him. But water under the bridge again. As of right now, the Mets really just continue to be playing baseball that is just good enough to scrape by and good enough to survive. And that really is just not going to sustain to anything. I understand that the Mets are playing better. There are 7-4 in June, 6-4 in June. Great. I'm going to need to see a lot, and I mean a lot more, in order to believe in this team once again. And I tweeted this out after the whole walk-off. Everyone was excited. I said, hate me if you want. I can't get excited yet. I just can't get excited yet because I know how inconsistent this team has been. Every single sign of good wonder, they just continue to just fade away as of right now. And maybe, the return of Francisco Alvarez can help you. Maybe the eventual return of Kodai Senga can help you. But I still look at this team as a lost cause going forward. Beating the Marlins, sweeping the Nationals, that is just not good enough. I hate to be the negative one. I hate to be the negative Nancy here, but I'm just saying I've seen too much crap in order to polish it off. Okay, that's literally the way that I'm really looking at it. And we can go into the comments, obviously. Junior Swingman, what is going on for joining us? Ibby, of course. Ibby, want a full-on baseball savant breakdown of Grimace. To be honest, I would love to have a segment of that because I think that, that was one of the best first pitches. The fact that Grimace threw a better first pitch than 50 Cent is pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. I understand different arm angles, different sides. He throws left-handed, one throws right-handed. You got to open the mechanics argument a little bit. But I'm just saying that was pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. And obviously with this series, let's run this one down, of course, because I personally see this as the Mets scratching out a series win. They had a lottery ticket and they won. Now, of course, the first game of the series, Tyler McGill did not go far, did get a lot of strikeouts. His velocity was going, had 17 whiffs, but he was not able to go deep in the games, mainly because of the defense completely hanging him out to dry. A drop third strike by Alvarez, who obviously has the concern with his thumb. A drop fly ball by Bader, a throwing error by Vientos, which I believe was rescored into a base hit, but still was not the greatest play by him. You had Vientos, of course, a 2-run double, but that was pretty much all of the offense that they can muster, and 4-2 loss in game one. On game two, David Peterson pretty much had the same problem that Tyler McGill had, but he was just ass because he's ass. Only able to go 5 innings, lots of extra base hits, lots of traffic, not much swing and miss stuff. Slider was not there. Bader, but the offense did show up. Bader 2 for 5 with a homer. You had 2 runs batted in by Alvarez. JD Martinez drove in a run. Marte drove in some runs on a home run. Vientos, another run batted in. Lindor with a 2-hit game, and then a 4-hit game by Tyrone Taylor as well, who was really struggling, and he was able to get off the schneid with 3 singles and a double. And then, of course, one of the big highlights, of course, that we will get into later, Dedniel Nunez with 2.1 scoreless innings in relief with 5 strikeouts. Very impressive. And the Mets won game 2. Game 3, Luis Severino went 6 yesterday, allowed 7 hits, 1 run. Could have been a little bit better, but he was able to get a lot of ground balls, induce a lot of soft contact. He was able to contact manage fairly well. Rode up to 103 pitches. The Mets were getting no hit for a long time in this game, and the score is actually wrong on the thing. That's a typo. They actually won 2-3. Whoops. But typos happen. Of course, walk-off 2-run homer by JD Martinez in the 9th inning, and the Mets are 6-4 in the month of June. I got to really watch these typos, but you know what? A lot of these graphics I do make late at night, so it just comes from there. But all I can say is that, a series win.
Yes.
It's a win in the books, but I'm not feeling the best about it. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I want to start. I think I'm just going to go where it's most recent. Listen, if you guys been watching these past few streams, you've heard me every episode talk about Danny Young. And for him to get sent down and Drew Smith to come into this game and give up a home run, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, I just don't get it. I really, really don't get it because, we hear all this like, we're trying to win, we're trying to get back in it, all this stuff. And I'm like, if you're not actually running out the best possible team out there, are you trying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like actions speak louder than words. And like Danny Young, it's like, have we found something here? Is this, is him and we're gonna get some Nunez, but like, are these like the Stearns guys he found out of nowhere that are now really good productive bullpen pieces? Like what I've been clamoring for, what I've been craving for after year in and year out, watching all of these veteran relievers get these $10 million deals, pitch like crap, the inconsistencies of relievers, good year, bad year, all this other garbage. Meanwhile, it's like the Brewers always have a bunch of really good pitchers that come out of nowhere. And I want to see that happen with the Mets. I just feel like that allows you to make such a better team when you can have a cheap bullpen and you could allocate that money into starting pitching, into hitting. And like, I don't know what happens with Danny Young now. And I feel for the guy because we've talked about it. He's been in the minors his whole career, and he's now 30 years old. This is now his first time where he could actually get like a season under him, a full major league season under him. And it's like he did nothing wrong. He was excellent, and he still gets sent down. And it's like, you have guys like Drew Smith. You have freaking Adam Ottavino, who's almost older than me. And he's still on here, just not being productive. So they try to preach this message of, we're still in it. We're not trading our guys. We're trying to get back this wild card race. But you keep Adam Ottavino around instead of Danny Young. You keep Drew Smith around instead of Danny Young. Heck, I mean, if I can only have one left-hander right now, today, I would rather have Danny Young than Jake Diekman. That's my opinion, Yeah. So I just think that, like, I don't know. Like, it's not the biggest thing to overreact for, but for me, I'm not even talking about just like from the Mets perspective, but just from the Danny Young perspective. I feel for the guy. It is very unfair to him that because all of these old men have no minor league options and these tenure and these contracts, that they get to stay, and it's not based off performance. That's not how you should run your team. I don't like, we've talked about it. I don't understand how Drew Smith has been here since 2018. That's insane to me that he's been here that long and, again, hasn't really earned it. So I don't know. It really bothers me. And you know what? The Mets were able to kind of, again, JD Martinez bailed them out. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that the Mets only get the one run and that Drew Smith go-ahead homer ends up being the deciding run and they lose the game. It's just a really bad look. You know what I mean? It's just a tough situation. I understand, like, you got to get Edwin Diaz here. I get that. And he pitched good. So I was happy about that. But I don't know. I just think that, like, even Sean Reed Foley, I'm like, Young's been better, but I'm okay with Sean Reed Foley over Ottavino. Like, I don't know.
SRF's been good. SRF's been really good.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like there were two pretty obvious options before Young that I would have chosen as far as guys to get rid of. Because, again, it's like, if we're trying to also not only get better now, but we're still this whole, like, assessment, this whole, like, okay, David Stearns needs to come in and see what's good, what's not good. Like, again, Adam Ottavino's nearly 40. You're done. It's over. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to get any better. It's too long with this guy. It is just too much. So let me see some young guys who are not only better now, but I could also assess, is this a future building block for me? Is this a future piece for me? I don't know. But it's like, just seeing this stuff like that, it's just frustrating. You know what I mean? Like, again, they won the game, so I'm not going to make like a whole rant. But I just think going forward, if I see Adam Ottavino do his thing of being bad, and I just feel like Danny Young, like, I don't know. I also wonder, like, how that affects the psyche, like the mental part of it. It's not like MLB The Show where it's like, oh, I sent the guy down, but a couple games later, I just call him back up. Everything's fine. Like, here's a guy working his tail off, making these changes, improves, and it's like, now I go to the minor leagues because of all these old men. Like, that's just not right to the guy.
Yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. I think that, in terms of roster construction, you want to have the best guys out here. And I think that it's more of just the thought of, it's just the business part of baseball. Like, will continue to be heartless no matter what. And I mean, it's obviously not fair. I think that, Danny Young has, I wouldn't say that he's completely earned a solidified spot in this bullpen, but he's really been good in terms of a bullpen that's really been bleeding this entire year, as to where these guys are completely overworked. Now, I understand the workload at the rate that he was going. It was possible they could burn it out. So it makes sense that, he was able to get a little bit of a breather. But again, you do have some older guys who, are starting to show their age. With Drew Smith, I think that I've kind of accepted that he's just going to be here no matter what. I really just, as much as my problems continue to go with Drew Smith, and I feel like he's just a useless reliever, because if you can't pitch in high leverage, or you can't pitch to righties or lefties, you're terrible. And you're basically just a waste of space on the roster. Especially with all the high leverage situations that you have in these days, especially with offense down a lot in this game. But the problem with, a guy like Danny Young and a guy like Dedniel Nunez, I think that they've both been really good, as to where, relievers, we all know how spotty they can be. You need to ride the hot hand in that situation. And again, and I tweeted this out, I said, if you really want to make a statement, you DFA Adam Ottavino. Absolutely DFA. But he loves New York. He's from New York. He's a great guy. He does the mellow celebration. He's on SNY.
Yeah.
That's the problem, that I feel like it continues to be. For some reason, he's here. I'm not saying that Adam Ottavino is a terrible reliever. I'm just saying that there's better options out there that can continue to actually help you progress as a pitching staff, especially with, the upside. Adam Ottavino, as good as he's been in his career, he hasn't even been that bad of a Met. I'm just saying that in terms of the trajectory he is on, he just cannot be one of the main relievers in this bullpen as of right now. And with Edwin Diaz back, I just don't really see any reason as to why his role is so significant that you can't just give it to the young hot hands who are controllable. Now, Adam Ottavino, maybe there's a possibility they deal him at the deadline. The way that he's been pitching recently, I don't think he has much value.
Yeah,
in terms of Drew Smith, I do believe they're going to try to move him, because there have been a lot of conversations about him getting traded before spring training began. So I feel like there is going to be an opening for that. Who knows? Again, he's a reliever making $2 million. He's going to be a free agent. But that is the type of arm that I definitely would do, like those little savvy, like he's in that he's like in that Michael Givens part. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Of what the Mets had 2 years ago. They brought in Michael Givens. He's going to be a free agent. He's a mid rotation reliever. Yeah. I think that, to be honest, overall with Drew Smith, and I think that he looks better, but he still has those same issues constantly. And I think that this is his 6th year here. I don't see him as a future piece.
He's a guy that will never be high leverage, because there's always the home run possibility. It's just he's too susceptible to the long ball that you can't put him in a tie game. You can't put him in a 1-run lead or down by any run, because no matter what, he's always just that one mistake away from new ball game. So I just think that having a guy like that is just too risky to put in a high leverage spot. And I think just overall, like in a vacuum, you look at, like, let's say you take off the resumes and you just put what Danny Young has and what Adam Ottavino has, and it's Danny Young every time. It's like if you put in the descriptions and you have Adam Ottavino, okay, 38-year-old reliever who has a massive problem holding on runners with rule changes and is right-handed, compared to here's a left-hander who doesn't have those issues. And, it's just like 8 years younger and way less major league innings. And I'm like, and one guy has a ERA of 1, and one guy has ERA of 5.55. And it's like, now I should, and like, you know what I mean? Like, if you just look at the descriptions, how in the world do you say, oh, I'm keeping Ottavino and not the other guy? Like, that's, I don't know. It's just like, there's so many factors that I just don't understand it. And it's like, okay, Ottavino has experience and high leverage, but again, with how he's performed, why would you put him in high leverage? You know what I mean? It's just like that. That's
I
the
think
other
that
tough part.
relievers will always be a finicky and inconsistent position that
of course
you can't just stick with this is my guy, this guy going forward, this is my guy. Edwin Diaz is a different story. That's a whole different story. And I want to get into him for a second, but
yeah,
I think that the way that you kind of have to manage the bullpen, and I think that they've done actually a pretty good job with it. I think that relatively compared to what, the previous front offices were doing, with a lot of relievers that were just creating a lot of black holes, they've done a really good job. You don't perform, you get sent out of here. And I hope that I hope that, considering it's a 1-year deal with Adam Ottavino, making $4.5 million, like I've said before, I said that I hope that at the right time, they do pull the plug. And I feel like this was the right time to pull the plug. But again, maybe they view him as a trade option. I don't think you're going to get much back for him. I think that, maybe a team takes him on for cash. I don't know. But like overall, I don't see Adam Ottavino as a valuable guy to showcase for the trade deadline. I just don't see that as a strong possibility as to where this guy needs to be in a high leverage situation, because the last 2 years, he just hasn't been good in high leverage situations. He just has not been his same self. He's still good. He's still a major league reliever. He's not a minor league reliever like Drew Smith. he's been a major league reliever. It's just, I feel like the workload on Adam Ottavino, not only is it overworking for him, for a guy at his age, but it also just does not apply to him anymore. I feel like there's just better options in terms of these high leverage pieces. I'm really tired of stacking up low leverage pitchers who can't handle these high leverage situations. And, I don't need 2 or 3 in my bullpen that can't handle higher leverage situations. Because right now you got Drew Smith, you've got Adam Ottavino. Maybe I guess you can count Diekman in terms of high leverage situations because he hasn't been good in that either. But you have 3 guys that you can't really depend on in any situation. And it really kind of ices everything out. I think that you really just need to see which pieces actually do work in this bullpen and, go from there and, kind of just piece it together piece by piece. And if they screw up, they screw up. You send them down, whatever. But I think that Adam Ottavino, we've really kind of established that I'm just done with him. I'm just done. I thank him for his service. I don't think he was bad as a Met. I think overall he was great value when he came here. But it's just time to go. It's time to move on. It's time to elevate to another younger reliever that deserves it, who has upside, who has done well in the minor leagues, who shows stuff that David Stearns likes. I just feel like the time has come where the Mets just need to move on. Adam Ottavino, I feel like this has been 3 straight years already, and I'm tired of he's back. That's how I feel with Adam Ottavino. He's back. Nothing against him. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a fantastic guy in the clubhouse. Everybody likes him. But it's just like something new. Give me something new. I know what Adam Ottavino is capable of. Now, obviously, this is B. Stearns. He's saying, should have deobated Otto. Young is better. That is Ibby chiming in here, of course, saying that someone needs to lead Ottavino behind the shed. Yep. Ibby does not believe that you're old at all. You got to continue the narrative.
I
Ibby. That's one of the rules
am
here.
older than that, but I mean, me and Ottavino were like neck and neck.
Okay.
There's the thing. Watching Ottavino is aging me rapidly too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other part of it. But
And
I
then
just
of
want to give.
course,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no.
Brad chiming in here, of course, agreeing with us that the Drew Smith experience needs to end. And we've been on that train for a while. So let's just say that.
A long time
But
we've
he's
been
still
talking
here.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
You
I
said
want to
you wanted.
give another shout out to Sean Reed Foley.
Yeah.
The walk stuff needs to be worked on, no doubt.
Yeah,
But
of course.
overall, he's been in quite a good amount of games, a lot of them multi-inning outings. And what's so interesting about SRF is that was a couple things. Number one, he changed his delivery from when he first got here. So obviously, when he first got here, he had the crazy mustache. He had like the Craig Kimbrell setup, and they're like, "What the heck is this guy?" But he obviously he had the injury, had the surgery, and now he comes back and he's looking really good. And what I love about him, here's a guy, free agent 2028. So
yeah.
I mean, that's a piece that's like I totally understand not sending him down. Like let's kind of because he's got no options left. So he's a guy that I'm like, okay, we definitely could keep around because again, at least you're versatile. At least you can do multiple things for me. Go multi innings. Ottavino can't do that. So again, it's like why? I just don't know why. Like we talked about, Ottavino stays or Drew Smith stays, and you don't just kind of let these young guys do their thing. Like and I thought Nunez was going to go. To be honest with you, I thought that after he threw the multiple innings, it's like, oh boy, he's not going to be available for a day or two. Might as well just send him down since he's not available anyway.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
But I think also even he's been sent up and down quite a few times this year as well, which again, unfair to him based off of performance. So, I mean, just they still have not handled that correctly, in my opinion. There's still a better way of doing that. But, overall, it's like I obviously don't think this is the last we've seen of Danny Young. It's just that I hope this doesn't hurt his psyche. I just hope that he's able to like just kind of continue what he was doing and just, come back and pick up where he left off. You know what I mean? Because I feel that he really should have stayed on this team because he's just been so good. And like I've said before, the fact that, when you look at it all in all, they've been the Mets' two best relievers, Nunez and Young. And like I said, these are the two guys we did not talk about in the offseason, in spring training, at the beginning of the season. They just came out of nowhere. They were not on the opening day roster, So I just feel like I don't know. I just kind of feel bad for them because of like it's a good story and it's like you really should, like we say, ride the hot hand, especially with bullpen. Like next year Danny Young could go back to being a disaster and not being a major league reliever.
And what will he cost?
Nothing. So it's a much better way to do it.
No more chucking out $10 million a year for Jerry's Familia. No more chucking out $8 million for 2 years for Dylan Betances. No more of that. Yeah, I mean, Sean Reed Foley, I understand why he's here. I've been a fan of Sean Reed Foley for a while. Obviously, I think that his stuff really allows him to get away with a lot of situations. And, in terms of the pitch tunneling, it's obviously a little bit inconsistent with him. It always has been. And, there's really a really hard way as to where, he can get chases and he can get a lot of consistent whiffs because he does have the good enough stuff. It's just putting it all together has really been a struggle for him for a long time. But this year, you're kind of seeing, again, as we've talked about with, vertical approach angle, and I'll get into that obviously with Dedniel Nunez, but in terms of vertical approach angle, you kind of want your fastball and your changeup to kind of tunnel the best way. They're supposed to look exactly the same, and they're supposed to move at the same pace, obviously with separation. You're seeing in terms of, Saros's stuff plus and pitch modeling, of course, his fastball is graded out at the highest it's ever been, and his changeup is graded out as the highest it's ever been. And then also, of course, he has a ridiculous slider that he's able to place in the lower third of the zone as compared to a lot of guys on this roster they've really have done a really good job adding in sinkers, cutters, harder sliders to guys' arsenals. And obviously that probably is the impression of David Stearns. And before we get into the reliever, I obviously want to talk about. I want to talk about him. I want to give him a spotlight because Dedniel Nunez has been unreal. Edwin Diaz made his return yesterday, and it was a lot more encouraging as compared to him just returning from the IL. At the beginning of the season, we were starting to see, he needed to work himself back a little bit. We don't know if it was adrenaline or not, but he did touch 100 multiple times. Slider was crisp, kept the ball on the ground. He still wasn't the full-on dominant self, but I think that out of all of the appearances he's had this year, that was the closest thing I've ever seen to the Edwin Diaz that I know and love. And I think that is so encouraging. And I know a lot of people will say, it was 2-1. We were losing. It's not a safe situation. I get that. A one-run game is still a one-run game. You got to keep that thing close. And whether it is against a team like the Marlins, who chases a lot and swings and misses a lot, sure.
Hey, whoa, hold on. Wait a minute. In fairness to you, to make your point, do we not remember where the Edwin Diaz crying origin story came from? From this very Miami Marlins team with Josh Bell hitting a bomb off of him. So, and that was less pressure because the Mets had a big lead in that game. There was more pressure today than there was in that blow-up game where he was crying after the game. So I don't want to hear any of that garbage. Absolutely not.
Exactly. Go for your Puerto Rican brother. Stand up for him. All right.
And listen, I criticize Diaz when I've criticized him a ton.
Exactly, because you don't know ball. I get it. No, I get it.
No, but I agree that was much better from what I saw from him last night. And I also think, first outing too, there was pressure there as well, because it's like, okay, you had your struggles, then you had your injury, which I don't think was real, to be honest with you. Because
I think it was real. I definitely think it was real.
You do? Okay.
Absolutely. He definitely didn't want to hurt his knee. He was overcompensating the living shit out of his upper body. I've never seen a pitcher just so afraid to get injured coming off the hill, coming off the slope.
Right.
It was pretty obvious because when I was watching every single pitch of his rehab starts, completely different. Like so much more relaxed, so much more easy. The ball just easily coming out of his hands. So much more pop. Like he tried to really work from his upper body, and it really killed him. And I understand wanting to do that because his knee, he needs that knee to push off, but
definitely
now you're really starting to see him a little bit elevate that a little bit more and kind of, go into his deep mechanics, because like I've said before, same stuff, different location. He needs to get that slider where he needs it. And I did not see a single slider last night that was placed in a very volatile position, especially when whether he's facing right-handers or left-handers or not. I think that it was definitely a real injury. Absolutely was a different.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like for a shoulder impingement, the recovery was pretty quick. So that's kind of where I'm a little that's
I get it.
It was probably a combination of the two. Sure, there was the mechanical fix is with using his lower body more, but I think for a throwing shoulder injury too, I don't know. I feel like the recovery was pretty fast, which is good. I mean, listen, as long as he's here doing what he's supposed to do, that's ultimately what matters. But that was just something that was kind of interesting to me. But like we've just finished talking about, with all these guys not being able to be used in high leverage, it changes the game as far as actually being able to have a trustworthy Edwin Diaz at the end of the game. It just changes the whole game plan as far as the way Mendoza can manage everything. So that's something that's going to be interesting to see. I mean, when he has the next save situation against a good team, then there'll be another test. But and again, we're still not going to get 2022 form. But if we just get somewhere that's better than 21, but not as good as 22, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I think that, I definitely saw him last night. That's Edwin Diaz. That's the Edwin Diaz I know. That was definitely the closest I've ever seen. It had nothing to do really with him hitting 100 miles an hour. Like, and I specify as to where, the fastball, yes, it can be explosive. He can get a lot of whiffs with it. He throws 100 miles an hour. You throw 100 miles an hour, you can get away with a lot of things.
He did hit a couple of nice numbers, though.
Yeah, and he did. And
too.
his velo was up.
Both guys had good velo last night.
His velo was up. His velo was definitely up, but he needs that slider to work in order for him to put batters away, in order for him to,
the slider is the key. I mean,
the slider is a world-class pitch. Yeah. That's his world-class pitch. And when he gets that in that perfect lower third, and we've talked about it before, he is going to dominate. The late drop, the late cut, the razor blade slider, whatever you want to call it, he is going to dominate. And that's what he did last night. It still wasn't as razor sharp. There were a few tough pitches or whatever, but that was the closest I've seen to 2022 Edwin Diaz in a long time. And I mean a long time, because he's been out for a year. So very, very encouraging. And, if we do get that Edwin Diaz and we continue to see that consistently, no problem. And, I did see that type of Edwin Diaz, some shades of it during his rehab starts as well. So I'm glad that it's continued to translate against the major league hitters. And hopefully he continues to recover from a very serious knee surgery that knocked him out for an entire year. And, like I've said, the recovery is going to take a while. He's still really good. It's just, we don't know how long it was going to translate. And it was good to see that great sign last night of him looking like the Edwin Diaz of old. The slider was crispier, a lot more velocity. It was definitely better as compared to the anus clenching outings he's had this year. Now, speaking of relievers, I want to continue on, and we hinted about him. We've been talking about him recently, but I also want to get into the rise of Dedniel Nunez, because I feel like at this point, it's really become an official story to the Mets bullpen, because obviously the Mets have guys who come in here, they get 3 good innings and then they get knocked out. It's official. Dedniel Nunez is a member of the Mets bullpen. I think that that's been pretty much established. There was a choice, and I mean a choice, to option him down after a marvelous performance in the second game of this series. And they said, no, he is a member of this bullpen, and we are keeping him here. So they established that he just got himself a bullpen spot, and he is in Mendoza's circle of trust. No, let's leave the circle of trust back with Buck Showalter, of course, but I do want to obviously bring in a more deeper dive to Dedniel Nunez, who basically has just been a diamond in the rough. Now, of course, he's more of a two-pitch guy, but the sinker, I feel like he should actually use that a little bit more, because it does have, a little bit of extra run that can really help him tunnel it a little bit with his slider. I feel like, but overall, I mean, this is definitely a diamond in the rough type of story. Dedniel Nunez, for those of you who don't know, he signed back in 2016 as an international free agent with the Mets out of the Dominican Republic. He underwent Tommy John surgery, and he was also taken off the Mets organization by being selected in the Rule 5 draft. The Giants said no. They gave him back to him at the end of spring training. And then he returned in 2022, broke out completely in AA and AAA. Very big increase in velocity, was touching 98, 99. And, I think that overall the stuff just really has applied, and he's been able to make his pitches. I've talked about earlier where, Dedniel Nunez has really struggled in terms of command, as to where it's just very, very streaky, and, you just don't know where it has been. Those concerns have pretty much silenced me either way. Now, when you talk about in terms of his fastball, it is the 8th highest graded fastball this season in all of baseball in terms of Saros's pitch modeling, of course, with a 140 stuff plus. Now, the reason why this fastball is so effective, not only is it have high spin, it's also in the high 90s. But when you look at it, of course, the vertical approach angle, as we talked about, you want that hovering around 4.5. it is at negative 4.2, which is obviously negative, meaning downward, of course, the vertical approach. But then you also look at, a sinker or a change up or whatever type of you want to talk about that has a lot of movement. You want a difference between your breaking ball and your velocity. You want that to be about 3.5 in vertical approach angle, depending on, of course, with your extension, with your release point, your release height. And, with his slider, of course, which is more of kind of a curveball sweeper type of thing, kind of a very hybrid pitch, same type of spin, great velocity separation. And those two pitches have really been just completely lethal, as you can talk about, not just only getting whiffs with it, but in terms of quality of contact, just a 147 expected weighted on base average, which is the quality of contact which opponents have against Nunez's slider. And in terms of just contact managing alone, just 5 batted ball events, which I believe is out of 57 this year that are over 100 miles an hour, which is, of course, barrel zone territory. And, of course, as well as in terms of relievers, Dedniel Nunez, his strikeout minus walk ratio is second among all MLB relievers in minimum 15 innings pitched this year, which is second behind that lethal flame-throwing man in Oakland, Mason Miller, who has been dominant this year and one of the best. He's on pace for one of the best relievers seasons we've ever seen. And of course, the traditional, the 2.3 earned run average, very impressive. The fact that he has gotten a lot of shitty batted ball luck overall, with a expected earned run average of 1.46, which is really, really impressive. That he probably could have been better in terms of exit velocity, in terms of quality of contact, which of course, using that slider has been one of the things. And 35.3 called strike and whiff percentage, which is obviously a measure of pitch by pitch of control and command. And, it's not there, and he is a reliever, and it's more fluctuated. But that's Jacob deGrom territory that we're looking at right there. 35%, 36%, 37%. That is Jacob deGrom territory of called strikes and whiffs. And he's just been one of the most pleasant surprises this year. He's 28 years old. He's been around for a while, but it's just one of those stories that I think, in terms of Dedniel Nunez, you find a diamond in the rough. You find that these tools of guys that they like, and he just runs away with it, and they're able to maximize it. And that has really been something that has continued to be a point of emphasis under David Stearns for a long time in his entire career. And you're starting to see that in terms of just random pitchers that nobody even knew who this guy was. Who was Dedniel Nunez last year? Who is that? No one knows. We saw him in spring training a little bit this year. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe something. Who knows? But he's been one of the best relievers in all of baseball this year. In the entire Mets bullpen, with Edwin Diaz struggling, man's been a lifesaver. And again, like I said, it's been established that he's a member of the Mets bullpen now. He ain't going anywhere. He has been fantastic. Frank, what do you think about Dedniel Nunez? Because I think that, we've seen these guys come and go. We've seen the inconsistencies, the effectiveness. So far, Dedniel Nunez has been up to the task out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think the big thing is obviously the walks. And I think more so in particular with this team, this pitching staff, the walks all year have just been maddening, honestly. I mean, it makes you want to pull your hair out. Just craziness. So many walks. But to have a guy who can be effective while not walking a lot of batters is really nice, because it's like, there's a difference between contact managing and trying to avoid barrels by just kind of pitching scared and, like we say, like the nibbling, like that Quintana does. But, to actually be aggressive and still be effective is really nice, and they've put him in a lot of tough situations. I mean, even
Oh yeah.
a couple nights ago where he's going a multi-inning outing, that's not easy. Like, not most relievers can't do that. So I think the fact that he's also been able to be versatile is also a big key. And it's just so important with this rotation of the 4 inning starts, the 3 and a 2 inning starts, the 5 inning starts. You need that length from your bullpen. So whether that is Nunez, whether that is Sean Foley, or even Adrian Hauser, having these guys that can go multiple innings is absolutely massive. So you don't tire out all of your arms. Even though Danny Young still got worked like a dog. And then, we'll see what happens as far as like now that Young's not here, and what the roles become for the older guys, particularly Deke Monadamir, like we were talking about. Edwin Diaz, using him where it makes sense and close spots, stuff like that. It just makes things a lot easier. We're able to just kind of get like, all right, how do we get the ball to Edwin Diaz? It's like, okay, so everyone gave me 5. Now let me go Nunez 2 innings. Now maybe Reed Garrett gives me 1, and then Diaz shuts it off. Like, I mean, like, just being able to kind of eliminate some of that. Oh, well, now I got to go to this guy for an inning because everyone can only do 1 inning at a time. Stuff like that also really helps you trying to win games and when the situation calls for it. There's always that debate of like, would you rather 1 inning from Nunez today and 1 inning from Nunez tomorrow's game, or do you want to just kind of go all out one game? Like, he can kind of do what you need. And in today's game, with the rule changes, 3 batter minimum, like we talk about, being able to kind of be put into multiple situations, and also to go on with the walks thing, like being able to put him in with guys on base. Like, that's another thing where, like, with Sean Foley, as good as he's been with his walk problem, I wouldn't want to do that, so I think that being able to kind of utilize these guys in a lot of different situations, that shows the real value of a reliever. So I've been very happy with that.
I mean, if you want to talk of in terms of just full on balance and being able to get so much from Dedniel Nunez, I mean, like overall in terms of just like lefties and righties, when we've talked about like these situational lefties, I mean, what are we really looking at here? I'm trying to find it. In terms of like what is it, OPS or whatever, like the opponent's OPS, you're looking at like left-handers against him are like 500 OPS, and then right-handers are like 450. I mean, like that's kind of how you're looking at it, as to where I think that when you go into a situation and you have a lot of, and I mean a lot of pressure on you, to have a young player like that who is inexperienced, who has really like kind of absorbed the pressure fairly well in these high leverage situations. He doesn't walk many. He's been able to contact manage well. He gets a lot of swings and misses. I think that overall, when the Mets bring in some of these guys, they obviously need to maximize it. In terms of Danny Young, we all know he's not an explosive reliever, and he's nothing amazing to the eye. But when you have this type of stuff that's tight, when you have this type of stuff that is just really, really good, that really complements complements it fairly well, and has a ceiling to only get better, you need to have some of these guys here where there's nothing but upside. I think that that's really how the Mets really need to establish it in the bullpen, because upside is the only way to get any type of consistency from this position. I mean, it always will continue to be finicky, like it is. And Daniel does make a good point in terms of what's going on here. There's 29 of you, I think, in the YouTube stream. There's we have a lot of people watching on Twitter as well. For those of you watching on Twitter, hop over to YouTube, because you can chat with us a little bit better, because I don't think many Twitter comments come through consistently. I'm not seeing many of them. I've seen a few, and then it doesn't happen. So for those of you who want to chat, voice your opinion, could be popped up on here. Only 11 likes. So for those of you who have not liked this stream, who has not liked the video, this episode, make sure to do that. Really helps us out. And that'd be awesome. Thank you to Daniel for pointing that out. And he's also saying that it's very sad that we are 7 games under 500 and 3 games back. It is insane. It really is insane because the National League is just very, very top heavy. And I think that we've really kind of established this as to you only have quite a few teams that are very complete in the National League. The American League is a little bit more depth wise. It's a little bit better. Especially the AL East, which is, pretty much a powerhouse at this point. In the National League, anything is up for grabs. It's a crapshoot. And, you hope that the heads or tails, if it lands on you at one point, if you're hot, this team's cold. That's kind of how we look at the National League as of right now, because there's just a lot of teams that, struggle to find consistency. The Mets are one of them. Now, in terms of the Mets lineup, before we get into the big boy that I want to talk about, because I think that this really has been a topic of conversation. We've kind of avoided a lot, but I do want to get into it. But in terms of Jeff McNeil, we've obviously had some discussions about him. Junior Swingman talked about this earlier. He said this earlier in our chat. And he said that, does anyone know the reasoning for having Jeff McNeil in the lineup again today? Now, I have not seen the lineup. Is it out yet?
It is out.
Sure.
Yes.
It is out. Okay. Yes. Now is he batting? He's batting ninth. Okay. Well, he's batting ninth, so it's the worst possible position. But I think that I don't know. I think that I don't think he's an everyday player anymore. And I think I've already established that.
I mean, we talked about earlier with the whole Danny Young versus Ottavino. This is on a bigger scale, but what Iglesias comes in here, right? He makes all these starts against left-handers and does phenomenal. Like multi-hit games, a bunch, average over 300, or whatever number you want to give me. All great numbers. And what's his reward? He sits on the bench and Jeff McNeil gets his job back. Why? You know what I mean? It's like,
did you not see that amazing hit that he had in London? That was just so skillful and cue shot. I mean,
he had a couple good at bats on Sunday.
Are you starting to get annoyed, Frank? Is this annoying?
I am, because again, they need to say what it is, and they're not going to say what it is, but we know what it is. I mean, let's be frank about it. Let's be honest about it. Yeah. It's not the best players playing. It's who has the contracts, who has the tenure, who's got the ego, they play. Because you cannot tell me that based off of their performances that Jeff McNeil is outplaying Jose Iglesias. It's false. I mean, you put up the numbers, you look at the production, you look at the results of the team. Jose Iglesias has done better this year than Jeff McNeil has done. It isn't saying much because of how bad Jeff McNeil has been in all aspects of baseball. But it's frustrating because I just don't do you want to get in it? Do you want to make a move? Do you want to actually be competitive? Play Iglesias. I mean, because, we're seeing all this other stuff. Earlier today, Jose Abreu got DFA'd by the Houston Astros. They have to pay him $30 million to sit his behind at home on the couch. Now, yes, McNeil has more tenure. It has longer contract. It's a longer contract to pay out. But the money is not that far off, and it's like we've paid more for other guys to sit million. To not be here. Max Scherzer, Verlander, McCann's contract went multiple years. We paid them to go away. And honestly, it feels like McNeil's getting to that point. It really does, because you know what? I've tried to be patient. You know what? He'll figure it out. He's been good for too long. We are now, tomorrow is June 15th. We went through April. It wasn't, he just had a bad April. We went through May. He didn't just have a bad May. We're in the middle of June, and I've seen zero improvement. Zero. I mean, it's not like he's breaking out. It's not like he's coming around. Nothing. There has been nothing. So how much longer do you need to wait? and it's like we've talked about, his age also factors into this. And like I said with Ottavino, like, it's over. You're not getting better. Like, this is just, it is what it is right now. It stinks. It's unfortunate. It was a bad decision, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation right now. And again, it frustrates me to see a guy like Jose Iglesias play his tail off, was in the minors this season, earned his way to get to the big league roster, does phenomenal when he's on the big league roster. And what's your reward? You sit on the bench. And again, it's just not right. I mean, it's like, we're trying to set this example. We're trying to make this new culture. It's like, okay, well, we DFA'd Jorge Lopez because throwing your glove into the stands is unacceptable. And you know what? We DFA'd Omar Narvaez because he wasn't getting the job done. It's like, okay, we're trying to set like this new precedent. We're trying to say, okay, this is the philosophy. This is what we do. But then you have these other guys that are still hanging around here, like McNeil, like Ottavino, and you see these other better options that are on your team, on your roster, that you're just choosing not to play. And I just don't like it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't care the lefties versus the righties, whatever, because what it comes down to is that, you know what? Okay, Iglesias' starts have been against left-handed pitchers, and he's done really well with that. But on the flip side, Jeff McNeil hasn't been good against right-handers or left-handers. So what difference does it make? Just give Iglesias the job and go. I mean, that's what it is at this point. And if they want to use Jeff McNeil as a guy, as his true, what his role should be, as a utility player, where it's like, okay, if I want to pinch run for this guy, or if I want to pinch it for this guy, I could put McNeil in the outfield for like a couple innings, or I could put McNeil at second base and move someone over. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm okay with them using him in that kind of role. If they want to like pinch hit DJ Stewart or pinch run Tyrone Taylor, or like whatever other moves they want to do, and just have McNeil take over to do like move guys around, that's fine. But I just think that when you're looking at, the everyday lineup, the starters, there's nothing there. I mean, like, it's just been too long. It's too much in consecutive that it's just not right when the better option is on your, like, that's my argument when he struggled, was I was like, okay, well, what else do you have on this team that you can replace him with? And I was like, what, Luis Guillorme? You know what I mean? What's it going to be, Joey Wendell? Like, that was the conversation.
What did I tell you? And I told you, I could literally go to Walmart and pick up a second baseman. Jose Iglesias has been out of the league for 2 years. That's what I mean. That's how this second baseman thing works. It's the most replaceable position in the entire sport. It really is. And it's just so aggravating as to where you look at it. It's like, Jose Abreu, he's had a really good career, right? He is one of the stalwarts of driving and runs, one of the best high leverage bats in the game. Won an MVP in 2020. Who cares, right? But he's had a really good career. He was a late bloomer, just like Jeff McNeil was. Jeff McNeil doesn't have those types of power and hitting tools that, he doesn't have those types of power and hitting tools to kind of be somebody that, can be, a longevity hitter in this type of game. But then if the Mets were to cut ties with Jeff McNeil, they're going to be paying him the same that Jose Abreu is going to be paid by the Astros. That's almost $30 million in dead money in the next 2 years for a contact hitting second baseman. And have I mentioned that Jeff McNeil's going to get a raise next year? That's funny, isn't it? That's really, really funny. Now, M-Easy has been on our case in terms of, and he's in the chat right now, in terms of Alonso, of us apologizing for Alonso. Sit tight. We got one for you. Don't worry. Jeff should just take 2 weeks off and then quit. Yeah, I kind of feel that. Christian Ramos coming in saying that they gave Jeff a week off to work on things, and he still can't hit. Correct. I mean, obviously, and then, of course, Ibby coming in as well with Grimace versus Squirrel can be the post-game act. Pay him for that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, again, I hate to say I told you so. Yes, I do. But I hate to say I told you so. But, like, this is how it is with second baseman. Like, it's just not a stalwart position that you need to lock into. And I understand Jeff McNeil, when he came in here, he was a consistent hitter. He was a consistent hitter, and that's the reason what they're banking on. We know that he's done this in the past. He's been with this organization for a long time, and they're going to give him all this time to do whatever the hell he wants. But, I feel like the foundation of what you look at with Jeff McNeil as to is, and this is how I feel with everybody on this team, they have not won anything to justify keeping them around. If you want to say, okay, I'm thinking about, like, if you were to just straight up say to me, I'm thinking about, maybe we should move Lindor. That'd be tough to do, but I'm like, there's nothing here justifying that we should keep him here. I'm not saying get rid of Lindor. I love Francisco Lindor, but at the end of the day, anybody on this roster is replaceable because, like I've said again, in terms of numbers, in terms of, whether it's history or projections, anyone is replaceable because baseball needs to be looked at as a business, and the business has been failing. That's how I look at it with Jeff McNeil. That's how I look at it with a lot of these pieces that we don't know if they're going to be here for the future. Anything else you want to add on McNeil?
No, I mean, I've been talking the whole like Beatty thing. I feel like I said this last episode, but he's so similar to Jeff McNeil that I don't see that as a solution. I feel like they have the same issues, same strengths, same weaknesses. That
Beatty's at least younger though.
Beatty is younger and like it's cheaper, but of course, no, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been one to see second basemen just sustain as contact first hitters, and that was like, again, I think that, when the extension happened with Jeff McNeil, and we've talked about this, probably the last few episodes, probably just running it out here. But, when the extension happened, I was like, okay, this isn't bad in terms of value. It's fine. It's fine value, whatever. But why are you committing to the second baseman? That I didn't understand. Like what? I'm like, okay, fine. Give him money that he deserved from winning a batting title. He was great in 2022, but why? Like, what was the reason as to why? And again, like, you can rotate through so many different second basemen. Like I've said, Jose Iglesias coming off the street, he's 34 years old. What really pisses me off, of course, of this whole situation is they actually have talked about this publicly in Jose Iglesias, trying to get better in terms of quality of contact and trying to have higher exit velocities, try to improve his bat speed. I don't know if he worked at Driveline or whatever, but there's definitely some improvement because this guy, I'm pretty sure he's hit the ball 110 a few times so far with the Mets. Like that's pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie. Jose Iglesias. That's Jose Iglesias. He's 34 years old. Jeff McNeil, 32, right?
Yeah.
And he's just here to just put the bat on the ball.
Does Jeff have a 110 this year?
He has 110 in his career.
Well, no, I'm saying this year. I'm not talking about his career. I'm talking about this year.
And that was 2022
oh.
in his batting title season. So, does he have a 110 this year? No, his highest is 103.
No,
104.
That's embarrassing. That's pretty embarrassing.
Again, like I've said, you literally can go to ShopRite. You can go to Stop and Shop and pick up a second baseman. That's what I've been trying to tell you all along. Welcome to the club. Welcome. I mean, that's how it is. And listen, I think that people are, plugging in some possible replacements for Jeff McNeil and, the Kevin Biggio or, the Tim Anderson. Like, again, it's like,
even though he's not available, I just want him.
You like Ketel Marte, like
I just want him. I know he's not available. I just love him.
The second baseman is like so replaceable in terms of, how you look at it. It's like it should be batting ninth every time. They should be batting ninth every single time, especially when you have
it could be Gleyber Day in New York still. You never know.
Gleyber Day, you never know. Gleyber Day. That's a different story, of course. But I think that, I feel like they're just stuck in that situation, of course. And we've talked about this before.
No.
It just was so unnecessary. Just so unnecessary to do that. You had 2 years of control on the game.
Yeah, I think
2 years of control.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the other guy next, but also the age is just what I don't
Yeah.
get too. The committing to players after 30 is just not.
It has nothing to do
it's
with the
not good
contract
business.
value. It
Yeah,
has nothing to
it's
do with the
not good
contract value
business.
because that's pretty much like nothing as compared to a lot of the second basemen in this game. But they have power. But in terms of when you're talking about Jeff McNeil, it was just unnecessary. Like it was just very unnecessary. 2 years of control. That's the guy you don't want to take advantage of years of control with. You wouldn't lock down Nimmo. You wouldn't lock down, like we've said, Alonso before. You wouldn't lock down Conforto even. McNeil is the guy that we have to buy out arbitration years from. Because that's so important. You know what I mean? Like that's
what's already gone.
Yeah, but I know, but in terms of like homegrown guys, buying out the arbitration years, keeping them. Michael
was a different situation because they offered him $100 million. He said no, so they tried.
He did.
So I mean, like that's also part of it.
Different story.
And Boris, like
it's
a different.
I'm just saying, like
they did offer it.
I'm just saying, like voluntarily making an effort when you didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. Necessary.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. It does not make any sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Ibby says that he's at ShopRite right now. What second basements are on sale?
Yeah,
Grab me a couple.
Yeah.
Ship them to AAA, and then we'll dupe them out from there. But other than that, in terms of key parts to this roster, Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
Now, Pete Alonso has had a season that has been productive, but not the Pete Alonso that we know. He's definitely taken a step back this year. You're seeing shades of it, but in terms of Pete Alonso as a player this year, in terms of Pete Alonso as to what he's supposed to provide, he has not been providing that. And that is in terms of one area of his game, which has been situational hitting, which has been a very, very big, and I mean big problem this year, especially when you have an offense like this that kind of runs through a guy like Pete Alonso. With Pete Alonso this year, I'm going to pop up his leverage splits. The big man's buckling in the big situations. Let's just say that. With the bases empty, he's been pretty much the Pete Alonso at his best. With runners in scoring position, it has not been that good. 82 OPS plus with runners in scoring position, 94 weighted runs created plus, whatever you want to say. And then, of course, late and close, which is a baseball reference type of situation where I believe it's the seventh inning or later with bases, with runners on base / down by 1 or 2 runs. It's something like that. He has not been good in that either. Then we can just look at it in terms of the leverage splits. Low leverage, he has been really, really good. Slugging at the the perennial 562 that he is at every point. Medium and high leverage situations, which he's gotten quite a few. Obviously, he's in the middle of the lineup. He's the main producer. It just hasn't been there. It's been below average. And he just has not been good situationally. And the reason why we say this and why this has been something that has really popped out this year with Pete Alonso is for Pete Alonso's career, on the contrary, he's always been somebody who's done well in high leverage. He's not amazing in high leverage. He's had moments where he's buckled before. But in terms of this year, it's been severely noticeable. When there's been runners on base, when they are in high leverage situations, Pete Alonso has not been coming through. And I think that has been really, really been obvious in terms of Pete Alonso. And it's really, really hurting him, especially in the current situation that he is in as a pending free agent going into 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I also like to kind of go along with it. The fact that they changed the lineup again. I don't know. Like, it's a weird time for the whole offense. And for Pete, it's like, if he's batting second and he has a hot Lindor in front of him and you're supposed to get like the most at bats, opportunities for runners in scoring position, men on base, in that 2 hole, he's going to be in high leverage situations quite often. And if they bat him fourth behind a hot Francisco Lindor, a Hall of Famer in JD Martinez, and if Nimmo could ever, well, not ever, but if Nimmo does be Nimmo, which I'm still kind of waiting on it, he's going to have a lot of opportunities and in big spots. So it's like he needs to come through. You know what I mean? Like it's what's asked of him. It's not like, this is our number 9 hitter or like our number 8. Like this is our guy this is our RBI guy, the most RBI since 2019 in all of Major League Baseball, Pete Alonso. Here are your RBI situations. You need to come through in them. So for him to not do well in the high leverage with the men on base, that's a big problem. And Douglas brings up a great point. The pitch selection, not only for really Pete, but with a lot of these guys, how many times in 2 strikes have I seen him looking on strike 3?
Yeah.
I don't know what, again, is that a Eric Chavez thing? Is that a Pete thing? Like it's hard to say, you know what I mean? Like but it can't happen, regardless. It's just something that is very frustrating when you're constantly seeing that happen. So that's been disappointing. And I'm going to say this. It's something I've been thinking about all week. So since we've started the whole conversation about Pete, I've been adamant. Don't trade Pete. I've been 100%. Don't trade Pete. Keep Pete. As the season has gone on, as I've looked at the team, my stance has changed. And the main reason my stance has changed is the age. I think that he's going to turn 30. I don't like committing at 30. I just like we talked about with Jeff. It's not going to be the same situation with Pete, but in general, it's not a good idea to begin a big long-term contract at age 30.
Yeah.
The first couple of years may be pretty good, but as we know, as it goes on, it becomes rough. And I think that the team is in right now a situation where is it even worth it? You know what I mean? Is it even worth the time? Because if this team does need to rebuild, paying Pete Alonso makes less sense. If this team was like right there and we had a really competitive team, yeah, I'd want to retain him. I'd be like, okay, I feel like we could get things done with him. But they're just not in that situation right now. Like we said, there's 7 games under 500. A lot of guys could be on the move, so this team could get even worse. We'll see what happens. But I think, where was Ibby? He talked about Jerry on the phone with Seattle. We talked about, Jeff possibly being traded for a marquee Seattle young pitcher. If they offered me one of them for Pete, I'd take that deal. I would. I think that, like we talked about, young, controllable pitching is a premium. It's the most important thing, honestly. So if I could get it, I'd take it. I think when you're about to approach a rebuild, if you could find a shortcut, if you could find a way to shorten it, but still get the end result by like, okay, we need to rebuild to get young pitchers, whether that's through the draft, via trade, whatever. If you have an opportunity where it's like, okay, I could get one of them right now instead of, because the alternative is just waiting it out and you go to free agency, Pete leaves, and yes, you get the comp pick. But it's like, is that going to be Brian Wu? Is that going to be another like really nice young pitcher? Probably not. So I think that like it just makes the rebuild a lot easier when you already have young pieces with you instead of, okay, now I need to go get them. I just think it accelerates it, and then the rebuild won't take as long if you already have some of the pieces with you. And I think the other thing with Pete is that the more I've looked at his numbers in relation to Freddie Freeman, in relation to Matt Olson, into other marquee hitters, like the guys we've been talking about, Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker. As I look at Pete's numbers compared to them, I'm really paying for the home runs. That's ultimately what I'm paying for. I'm not paying for high average. Pete Alonso, he's not an over 900 OPS guy. Like guys like Freddie Freeman nearly finished with 1,000 OPS last season. That's never going to happen with Pete Alonso. Ever. It's never going to happen. He's just not that kind of hitter. I mean, it's just like he's a pull hitter, and he's not pulling as much this year. Like I've talked about, the balance has not been there, popping up way too much. Like I just feel like as I look at him more and more, there's just more things going against him than going for him. And it's more and more when he's playing like this, it's more and more come down to like, I'm just looking for a power hitter. That's all I'm replacing.
And when he's playing, he is playing like this, which is it's still productive the way he's been playing.
Yeah.
It's just not what we need him to be doing. Like it's not the production that we expect from a guy like Alonso.
But what it comes down to is like, people make the comparison of a guy like Christian Walker, who is outplaying Pete Alonso this season, but Christian Walker is quite a bit older.
I still ain't going for that.
Yeah, I'm not going for it.
Yeah,
I'm not either. Like he's too old. But still, he's outplaying Pete. Even a guy like he's one of the top home run guys in all of baseball. Not all baseball, but Josh Naylor. Like he's not getting 170 million 7 years, but he's giving me better numbers. So it's like I don't know. And again, like this obviously isn't the most fair situation because, like I said, I think the contract is weighing on him, and one of the reasons why he's not playing to his best capability.
I'm done making the excuse, though. I'm just done making it. But I can't do it anymore.
But I'm looking at his previous seasons too. I'm like, okay, well, let me look at last year. Let me look at 22. Let me look at just overall, and I still just don't see like elite numbers. You know what I mean? And
I get it.
And it's definitely not.
You said this before.
It's definitely not on the defensive end.
Yeah, of course.
Sure. That arm makes me want.
And listen, we've said this before. Again, as compared to all these other teams,
like
Alonso is more important to the
Mets
Mets than any other team.
If I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna shell out a bunch of money, give me Kyle Tucker, not Pete. You know what I mean? Like he's younger. Okay. He's a better overall hitter. He's an outfielder. Like, I just feel like if I'm going to, and then even like a Vlad Jr. versus Pete, like right now, Pete's production is technically better, but
both of them are.
Yeah, both of them have not been great this season, but Vlad's younger. And again, I feel like if Pete was younger, I wouldn't mind it. But I think right now, his timeline, the Mets timeline, I'm starting to feel that it does make less sense to actually retain him. And if I can get a really nice piece, I should take it because like we talk about with comp picks, they're lottery tickets. It's like, am I going to get something good? I hope so, but there's no guarantee. If I could get a young major league piece who I've seen already be good in the major leagues, I should take that deal.
I think that when you look at it from Pete Alonso's standpoint, it's really hard to not defend the homegrown guy who's been here for a long time, who, is on the pace to break franchise records, who's been that type of guy. But I think that it's more of as we want him to be that guy as compared to we know he can be that guy. And he's been the guy before. But yes, Pete Alonso is, he's been a great player. He's one of the greatest Mets ever. He absolutely is. He has that track record. And, at his best, what he's capable of. But in terms of these last 2 years, he's still been productive. It just hasn't been Alonso. It just hasn't been the Pete Alonso that we all know can be the main producer in this lineup. And it's not like I'm just saying this as this has been how it is the whole time. He's not clutch. He gives you all these stupid home runs at different times. He's Lucas Duda.
Which is false.
What I'm saying as of right now.
That narrative is false because a lot of his home runs have been go ahead.
A lot of his home runs are high leverage home runs. Absolutely.
A lot of them have been deciding.
Throughout his career, he's definitely helped this Mets
offense. That narrative is false.
Do I believe that the Mets have failed Pete Alonso throughout his career?
Yes.
Of not surrounding him? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like when you get to the point as to where you have to go into the trenches so much to defend something like this when he's not really performing the way that you really want him to, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to do that? Now, let me say this straight on. I want Pete Alonso to be the guy. I want Pete Alonso to go on a hot stretch and help lead us to a playoff berth. Absolutely, I want the team to win. But in terms of the reality, when you come with Pete Alonso, he's been productive. He just hasn't been great. Like, he just has not been a Pete Alonso that we all know and love at his very best. I know he's capable of it. I don't see any sign of him slowing down in terms of his hitting talent. I think that he's still, he's not Ohtani, he's not Judge, he's not Betts or exactly. Soto. He's not those, but he's in a tier below them. He's one of the best hitters in all of baseball at his best. But I'm not seeing it. It's come up to a point where put up or shut up, Pete. Put up or shut up. I'm done making excuses. I'm done saying he needs protection. I'm done saying that he doesn't get enough pitches. We've come to a point where this team, and I've said it again, they haven't won anything to justify keeping them here. Give me a reason to keep you long term. He has not done that this year.
Right now, Pete Alonso is ranked number 46 in all of Major League Baseball in OPS. Like, that's a problem. Yeah. Again, it's like he's just, if I can't pay elite money to a guy who's not an overall elite hitter. And I think, and one of the reasons why I feel that way is because I'm looking even at like Lindor, who is getting over 300 million. And while obviously more tools, I get it, absolutely, but still not elite offense production, which he never was. I get it.
Yes, of course.
But again, when I look cross town, and I see two guys. One of them has OPS over 1,100, and the other guy's got OPS over 1,000. And I got no one on my team can get over 800. I'm like,
it's like the Mendoza line for us.
Yeah, it's like it's frustrating. Like I'm not like we're like you said, like we're tiers below, and it's like why am I paying when I'm not getting top tier? It's frustrating, and it's like Kyle Tucker. I got a much better chance at reaching that higher plateau. Like there's better upside there. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like it's a tough situation. As I'm watching like the Dodgers, like and Mookie, he's like over up there, and Freddie, and you know what I mean. Like all these, like for the other teams, it's no problem. But for the Mets, it's like pulling teeth to get something like that to happen.
And listen, I understand like the sentimental part of this, and Jerry's coming in.
And listen, it'll be a sad day. Like it will.
It will be sad. It will be sad because. He's been with this organization for almost 10 years. He's been, this is his ninth year in the organization overall. I mean, he's been here for a long time. But I think that when you look at the business side of baseball, if something has to be done, it has to be done, And, Jerry coming in here as to where he says, I've been a Mets fan since 62, which is the year that they were established as a team. And he said, if Pete leaves the Mets, it will be one of the saddest days as a Mets fan. Like the two times we lost Seaver and when we lost DeGrom, decided to go to Texas. Exactly. Absolutely. 100%. I get it. I 100% get it. But I think that the emotional and the business part of baseball, they have to be used in a separate way, and they should not influence the way that you run a team. It just shouldn't be that way.
And in the situation with Jake, it's like we didn't get anything back for him. So if you could be proactive and at least get something back for Pete, it's not going to be amazing, but at least we did kind of
get something back for Jake, who's been killing it in the minor leagues this year. But again, I'm just saying, situation is situation.
It's not like with Beltran, it didn't work. But if Wheeler was healthy, that would have been a pretty good, like, okay, this is a guy that was a franchise piece for us. We traded him, but we got something that was really good for the long term. It ended up happening in Philadelphia, but still, it's like something more along those lines is what we should be looking at.
I get it, and we'll actually get into it in a few minutes. What they could get back for Pete. But when you look at it in terms of just the Mets, keeping around their homegrown guys, we've talked about this before. I think that the Mets really, it's hard to just say, keep these guys who've been here for a long time and have done it in a Mets uniform before, again, when they just have not won anything to justify that. I think that, Pete Alonso, there's still talent there. I think that Pete Alonso is, at his best, one of the best hitters in all of baseball. He's not the best, He is, he's in that top 10%, not top 10, top 10%. Different story. Percentiles, rankings, different story. But the problem with the whole thing with Pete Alonso is we've come to the point where it's water under the bridge as to where we knew that they should have brought out his arbitration years after he won Rookie of the Year in 2019. He had an incredible season. Whether you talk about it as the juice balls or whatever, he still is a 40 home run bat every single year, a sustained 41 home run bat for 5+ years now. The problem is that we've come to the point again where I need to see the results or you're not getting anything. And it's unfortunate. I get it. Do I believe the Mets have failed Pete Alonso? 100%. Do I believe that the Mets have not surrounded him with power for him to get protected, to get more pitches to hit and dominate the game that we know that he could? Absolutely. But that we've come to a point where that is a sunk cost. There's no going back to it. The only way you can fix that is with a time machine. You don't have a time machine. Those don't exist. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm just saying as to where what's done is done. So it's either you show me you want to be a future part of this team, or we'll find somebody else who thinks they could. And I hate saying it. I do hate saying it because Pete Alonso is probably one of the best hitters I've ever seen as a Mets fan. Of course, I'm a lot younger. I'm on the younger side, but he's up there with Strawberry. He's up there with Piazza.
Well, that's the thing is that if he does stay, he will have the records. So
he will have the records.
It doesn't matter
Absolutely.
what your age is. Like the history is the history. Like,
but in terms of
there's been a very heavy pitching franchise organization. Like that's just the fact. They haven't
in terms
had
of the business side of baseball. We've talked about this before.
Yeah,
it's heartless. There's no feeling involved in it. And, it happened with DeGrom. It could happen with Alonso, where the Mets, they probably will have to eventually build up the courage to let him go. If they get to that certain situation, they might have to. I know that they probably still see him as a long-term piece. Maybe they do. But you're in a pivotal spot right now where you got to see it from him. He's got to prove it to you. And I feel like he's proven enough throughout his career. But I'm talking about at this current situation, where this franchise is heading, on the trajectory they're at, you need to see it from Pete Alonso, and you're not seeing what you need in terms of their top hitter, in terms of their featured hitter, their guy that the lineup is completely built around. Do I think that they built the lineup well around him in the past? No. But this is the situation we're in.
And the other thing I'm thinking about too is that if he's struggling in high leverage this season, and he's struggling overall this season because of pressure that he's putting on himself due to the contract, how does that translate to a postseason where there is a whole lot of pressure? Yeah. And how are you going to perform there? Because if I'm keeping Pete Alonso, it's because I think that if I'm going to go all the way, he needs to be a part of it. But if he's a player that's showing me that can't handle a lot of pressure, why would I have him as a part of that?
Yeah. And then, listen, I think
if you were listening, I just told you, Josh Naylor has some of the most home runs in Major League Baseball. That's who protects Jose Ramirez. So stop saying that. I just told you.
Well, Jose Ramirez also doesn't get the third least amount of pitches in the zone. Again, and listen,
Josh Naylor is tied
in terms of offense
sixth
as well.
Like he has one less home run than J-Ram. Like, come on.
We talked about this before in terms of hitting environments. Cleveland is such a hitter's friendly park that anybody could be a 20 home run bat there. It's different with Citi Field. Again, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is the Mets needed to protect Pete, and they didn't do it that well. They didn't. But there's nothing we can do about that now. There's nothing we can do about that. Did they try this year with JD Martinez? They did try with JD Martinez. But with JD Martinez here, I'm not seeing the production. I'm not seeing the production.
That's the thing that frustrates me too, is that this was like finally they had it and it didn't even work.
And I was like, finally, they protected Pete Alonso, finally, and now I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. Sorry. I think it's just really, really hard to excuse something like that. And it's kind of like the same situation with Conforto. He didn't perform to the standards, and they let him go. He played well enough to get a qualifying offer. That was it. That's all he deserved. As much as I like Conforto, and much as I think that, if it wasn't
that's not what we're saying. We're talking about protection for Pete in the past. What I'm saying is that Josh Naylor is 100 times better than Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff and Dominic Smith and JD Davis. That's what I'm saying. Not JD Martinez. JD Martinez is better than
I think
Josh
the four players that you just said there, I think they've all been released or DFA'd in the last, 3 years by other teams or by the Mets.
Exactly. Or both.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's
what I mean.
We're saying that there is no excuse
in the past.
We're saying right now there is no excuse for protection for Pete. He has it now. He has JD Martinez. There is no excuse. We agree with that. But
he even has Vientos.
He has Vientos too.
Vientos has been good.
Great. So, but in years past, when he had Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff and Dominic Smith batting behind him, there was no power protection. So that we're talking about before, not this season, before. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
And now that theory just kind of fizzled out. I mean, again, you got to prove it. You got to prove it on your stage. Because again, yes, if you want to keep your long-term guys, you want to keep it the way it is, you want to be a traditionalist or whatever, the city moves fast. New York moves fast. And if something's not working, something ain't working. And I hate to do it to Pete, because I think Pete has been, one of the best developed hitters ever that we've ever had. But again, they haven't won anything to justify keeping him here. And again, I say that the same for whether it's Lindor or whether it's or Nimmo. Again, if they want out in terms of their contract, if they want out, so be it.
Yep.
So be it.
Yep.
Again, I've come to accept as to where the Mets aren't going to compete with these teams for a while. If they need to get something back for these types of players that want out, or they don't like the direction of this franchise is going at the pace they're going, so be it. And I'm not saying that I'd love to trade Lindor. I'm not saying I'd love to trade Nimmo. And like I've said, in terms of this, and M-Easy also gives a good point, his guy Nimmo also deserves a little heat too. Nimmo hasn't played well either. He hasn't been really Nimmo. Nimmo's been okay, but he has not been Nimmo. That's a different story, because Nimmo,
he's
pretty
been bad
much
lately.
99 times out of 100, he's going to be here. Nimmo is pretty much locked in to be here.
No.
But again, I am not opposed to the direction of letting any of these players go, except Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz stays here forever. Okay. He stays here forever. He is my precious. But,
and I'd like to keep Alvarez.
Yeah, obviously Alvarez. But what I'm saying is there's not really many guys on this team where I'm like, oh, he has to stay here to be part of our franchise for the future. What future? What trajectory are you going in, where you just want to be doormats to the Phillies and the Braves and basically get into dogfights in 500 records with the Washington Nationals? They're not even ahead of the Nationals right now. Right? No, the Nationals.
The Nationals are ahead. Who are in rebuild mode.
Who are in rebuild mode.
We're the old roster.
They traded Juan Soto. They traded Trey Turner.
Yep.
They got rid of Max Scherzer. That entire World Series team is gone.
Besides Patrick Corbin.
Because you can't even pay somebody $8 billion to take that motherfucker. You know what? I give credit to Patrick Corbin, though. I do give credit to Patrick Corbin. He's terrible, but he's out there every 5 days.
It's true.
Yeah. You can't say that about half of the league. Yeah. Let's just say that. Can't say that about Senga. Just saying, You can't say that about a lot of pitchers. He's out there every day.
I'm looking at Nimmo. Last 4 games, 167, 118 batting. Oh my God, 167 on base, 343 OPS. Last 28 days, 214 average.
I think he's going to figure it out. Again, it's like
619 OPS in 22 games. Yeah. It's been rough.
Not good.
It's been a lot of it's been with the movement and the lineup. But again, it's like you have to choose. because he's right now, the way it breaks down is like he's a
him. All I can say is him.
So what I can say for Nimmo is that batting leadoff, he's 363 OBP, which is not too far from him. 761 OPS, which by this team standards is not terrible. But in that 3 spot, you're looking at 225, 303, 641. Like that move just hasn't been good for him. So they have to, again, it's like, to me, when it comes to Nimmo, you have to put him back in the leadoff spot. And Lindor just needs to figure out that you're getting paid too much money to be strictly a leadoff hitter. Figure it out. You got to bat somewhere else, Francisco, and you got to hit.
But in terms of Nimmo, like him batting second or third, I think that eventually he's gonna figure it out. Like I'm not really worried.
I think with Brandon, I just think he's so accustomed to,
yeah,
like it's like you're asking someone to play a new position. Like you're asking an outfielder to become an infielder.
Well, the problem with this team is
you're asking a guard to become a center. Like, it's
the walk hunting on this team is just unbelievable. I mean, they just like on 2 strikes or on. They always need to stare. They always need to stare at the first 2 pitches. Always need to do that.
Especially yesterday, where like
I wonder who's influencing that.
As they're getting no hit, they're drawing walks, but it's like you don't have a hit yet, guys. Like in order to bring those walks in, someone's got to swing the bat eventually. So
and that's what I loved about Lindor last night. Draws the walk in the bottom of the 9th, takes second, put him in scoring position. That's what I love. That's what I love from the leadoff hitter. That's kind of what you limit from Nimmo, who doesn't steal bases. But Nimmo was able to hit a bunch of extra base hits, kind of canceled a lot of it out. He's a productive hitter. I mean, he's one of our best hitters, and I think that he will continue to be. I think he's going to be fine eventually. It's just the fact that, of course, the lineup adjustment, it is fine, but I think that I like Lindor for the leadoff spot in terms of his tools, because I think that the leadoff hitter needs to have all 5 tools.
He fits the modern day leadoff hitter very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not denying that, but I just think
unless you're Philly,
team,
that has Schwarber.
But I think for the sake of the team, as far as like the fit of the team, I think Nimmo has to lead off.
Yeah, I don't think the leadoff hitter should just be the guy who is just gets on base or has the high OBP. It needs to be a guy who's fast, can get on base, can provide power, and also just overall just be an athletic player. The athletic player, I think that is the best way to be the catalyst for the offense. Nimmo is quick. He's a little quick. He doesn't use it. He doesn't use his lower half.
Every now and then he can have power. It's inconsistent.
Yeah. It's just he's not that guy. He's a guy who focuses on the quality of contact, on the quantity of contact, on pitch selection. That's the type of hitter he is, and he's developed into a great one. And I'm not worried about Nimmo long term. I really am not, because I think that him overall as a hitter, he's just at his best. He's a lot better than this. He's a lot better than this. I'm not saying he's a perennial 800 OPS guy, but I'm saying that he's a lot better than this. Nimmo's, Nimmo's Nimmo. I don't need to worry about Nimmo. He hasn't been good, but in terms of him, like long term, which he's gonna most likely be here long term. He's a long-term piece. He's signed for the next 7 years, 6 years.
No,
I don't worry about him. I don't worry about him. Like, I don't worry about Nimmo. Like, Nimmo hasn't been good, but he is not my main problem. I think that the fact that he's been batting third and the batting second is the reason as to why he's gotten a lot of criticism, because usually the guys who bat second and third are the guys who have the biggest spotlights on them. That's usually how it is, because they get the most opportunities. They get the most plate appearances. Leadoff hitters are leadoff hitters, and they've changed. But in terms of like batting second, batting third, there's a big spotlight on those guys. It really is. Leave Lindor where he is. And exactly, I like leaving Lindor in the leadoff spot. I have come to love Lindor in the leadoff spot. I think that that's the best way for him to display all the tools he has in the prime of his career. Absolutely. But, then you do have Nimmo here. And I think that Nimmo will figure it out. But Yeah, I don't have to worry about him. Let's just say that. I don't have to worry about Nimmo because I think that the talent's still there. But in terms of the streaky hitters, we have a lot of them. Let's just say that. And I think that, in terms of the lineup, and another note I obviously want to put on here, and then we'll get into the trade rumors, of course, even though we've already, stepped on those. Marte batting fifth. I still don't like it. I'm still not a fan of it. I just don't really like, a guy like that in the middle of the lineup, a very erratic bat. I know that he's been hot, but in terms of how he is in a nutshell at 50th percentile, I want him anchoring the bottom of the lineup because the Mets have really had a problem depth-wise in this lineup. It's been a very top-heavy offense. And to be honest, it hasn't been really as top-heavy as it used to be, but it's been inconsistently top-heavy. And I think that that's the best way to kind of anchor, that whole situation. Unless Marte wants to start stealing bases again, which I think he stole this series. Like, if he can't use his lower half as he used to for what we've paid him for, I'd rather him just be anchoring the bottom of the lineup, batting sixth or batting seventh. I get he's hot. I get he's contributed. I get he has a high batting average. I get it. But, there's more featured hitters that I need getting more ABs than Starling Marte. I can't see him. I just don't see him as a two-hole hitter. I don't see him hitting.
Well, what are your thoughts on Tyrone Taylor hitting ahead of Francisco Alvarez?
I think Alvarez just needs to be eased into the lineup. I think that's all that is. I don't think Alvarez batting eighth. I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that he's young and he doesn't need as much sunlight. I think that has something to do as he's coming off of injury. He needs to be able to grip the bat, grip the ball, and they're just trying to ease him in there. I think that once it's all said and done, he starts getting going. He's going to be batting fifth or sixth. Absolutely. 100% day after day. I think that I don't like Marte hitting ahead of Vientos. I don't like that. The ground balls with Vientos are very frequent. Marte gets on base. He doesn't steal much. Double play depth is in order. Mm-hmm. I'd put Vientos behind, whether it's Martinez or Pete in the cleanup spot. I put him behind there until Alvarez is full swing. I'm
okay with
they need to feature.
I'm okay with Vientos, Marte, Alvarez. Like, I'm fine with that. I don't like Taylor above Alvarez. That's a little
Taylor's Taylor. He's a fourth outfielder. Like he's Taylor. He provides it in the margins. That's what he's there to do. And listen, I think that in terms of the defense, it's really hard. I think that it's really hard to not see Marte, and they were talking about this on Till Mets Do Us Part, another great podcast, by the way. Yes. They were talking about it and talking about his defense has been so detrimental to the pitching staff, and so he's costing them runs, but he's also produced a lot better than we expected him offensively. He's kind of just a net zero right now. How it's kind of turned into.
Well, again, right now he's so singles driven that it's I think his average is 280 something right now. But again, still not a guy over an 800 OPS. And if he's not stealing bases, when we talk about overall production, it's very Jeff McNeil-ish, if you know what I mean. It's singles, but what's happening after that? If the guys
are you gonna steal?
Yeah, if the guys in front of him aren't getting on, and the guys
and that's why Bader should be batting second.
And the guys behind him aren't hitting, he's just kind of hung out there to dry, So yeah. I think that if you want to move more, if they want to go back to the original Nimmo 1, Marte 2, a hot Marte 2, Lindor 3, I'm okay with it because I think right now at 5, it's just that hot bat. It looks a singles bat it's like we talked about. It's like a singles bat behind Alonso. It's just weird. You know what I mean? It's just an awkward fit, So I think that if he's hot, which is not going to stay hot forever, but while he's hot, you can have him at the top. or one. I like again, like we're talking.
I still don't trust it
This team
enough.
basically almost
Yeah.
anybody in this lineup outside of Martinez and well, maybe not as much now, but before, like you have so many guys that seem that get lead off. We've talked about it, like so many.
Yeah,
Guys.
of course.
Nemo could do it. Lindor could do it. Marte could do it. Taylor could do it. Stewart could do it. Bader could do it. Good Jeff McNeil could do it. Like a lot of guys on this team could do it. So
yeah,
they have options, but I don't know. This 5 spot's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think, it's weird with the lineup construction because you're just trying to find combinations that brings you consistency. And, you're not really getting that, of course. I think that, there's a revamp that has to be done that's a lot deeper than just lineup construction. But again, that's a different story. We don't have time for that. But in terms of things that we do have time for, I do obviously want to talk about the trade rumor mill. Of course, we're doing this every single week now. The mill, it runs in a circle, and that's kind of how we're looking at it. But this week, we're looking at this from a grain of salt because these reports are from Andy Martino. Now, we all know how Andy Martino can be, but he's Andy Martino, so shovel forward. Now, this one is in terms of potential return packages for a lot of the rental pieces that the Mets got, and some news, of course, on Pete Alonso. Now, in terms of the rental pieces that are not featured, of course, as the top pieces on the team, Harrison Bader, Andy Martino. Yeah, Andy Martino is available for trade, guys, as well, if you want him on the market. Adam Ottavino, JD Martinez are expected to fetch only modest returns. Severino gets you an average prospect, which is from one which he got from one high-ranking source in the National League. He's an executive, and also that many note for the rental market for right-handed sluggers is not usually robust, which hence the expectation that there's going to be a smaller return for JD Martinez come the April 1st trade deadline. So there's a few pieces that are just not really going to get you the big return that you expect they will, mainly because they're rentals. And of course, it's just the rental market. Of course, there is a lot of options for rentals. So you're not really going to get that big of a deep market in terms of a lot of pieces, especially when they're not relatively young, such as Bader or Ottavino or Martinez with some upside. Now, in terms of Alonso, this has been, of course, a main topic of possibly trading him on the market. He is going to be, they're going to be listening to calls on him. And Martino basically said that for a rental, you don't really get anything for Alonso unless there is a bidding war, which came from one evaluator. Per another veteran executive, Alonso may get you someone's 5th to 10th overall rated prospect, but not somebody that is going to be a stud. Now, these are directly from Andy Martino from SNY. Now, I think that there's really a conversation to be had in terms of Alonso. And I think that this has really gone true for a long time as to where the Mets really value Alonso a lot more than other teams are going to. Mainly because they kind of have a more sporadic, a more variety of that type of talent on their team as compared to the Mets, who, they're not really young and up and coming. And, the Mets' only power bat has been Pete Alonso for the last 5 years. So in terms of overall value that he brings to the Mets as a team, it's a little bit different in terms of around the league of what value he would give. Now, Pete Alonso, at his best, he definitely could be a game changer, but you're not going to get the return that you think that you're going to get for him. So anybody who expects to get, Jackson Holiday in return for him, it's not going to happen. Okay. You're not going to get those high ranked prospects, of course. And that, I think that brings up kind of a seesaw type of situation where it's very fluid as to where, maybe you could try to get something back for Alonso, but, if you looked at him as a future piece to this team, and want him to be a future piece of this team, is it really worth it to just get a fringe top 10 prospect for him? I think we do go back and forth with that. I think people are like, okay, you got to get something back for him. We got to move on. We got to get younger. Fine. I think a lot of people see it as, well, if I'm not going to get anything back for one of the greatest hitters in this franchise's history, well, who cares, right? It's just different. I mean, for a rental, that's the type of value that you're going to see. It's not like, he's a slugger. That's it. He's been a pure slugger. So even though those do well in the postseason and, they can translate fairly well, at this current moment, what are you really going to get back for Pete Alonso? It's not going to be a major league ready piece. It's not going to be like, oh, position for position, let's trade, Christian Encarnacion Strand for Pete Alonso. It's not going to happen. Pete Alonso, at his best, is one of the best hitters in baseball. Hasn't really shown it much recently. We know he's good. We know he has trade value, but it's not going to be the trade value that you expect. So for those of you looking at the top fives of competing teams in their farm system, you're probably not going to get something back for him in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the one I would argue is I think if he keeps going the way he's going, I think you can get a pretty good return for Luis Severino. I think you can get a nice piece for him.
Oh, yeah.
I look at what the Mets got for Scherzer. No, not so much Scherzer, more so Verlander. Verlander wasn't that great last year. You know what I mean? Like,
he wasn't, but it's pedigree.
I know it's pedigree, but still, even with his age,
Severino
I'm surprised.
Verlander.
No, he's not. He's not. Like, he's not.
They don't have a Scherzer or Verlander here.
Yeah, I don't know.
That have that experience that they can be like, oh, let's sell them off for two top 5 prospects. Severino. Like, Severino's been good before, but he ain't Verlander. He future Hall of Famer.
No, he's not. Yeah. But I just think he's having a good enough season where starting pitching is so important
value.
That I could see a little bit of a bidding war where maybe you get I think you get a pretty good piece, not generational, not top 1, 2, 3, but I think you can get a pretty good piece for Severino if he keeps up the way he's going. As far as Pete, same thing. Like, you can get, again, a pretty good piece, nothing insane. But with the other guys like Quintana, Bader, Ottavino, a lot of these other guys, whoever else you want to list, you're not going to
take what you can get.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything ridiculous from them. So for me, it's like, it depends where they're at. If they turn it around, maybe we'll see what happens. But if they're totally out of it, then you gotta get your stuff. You gotta get stuff back. You gotta get younger assets, younger pieces. It's the oldest team in baseball. Like, they need to get younger some way, somehow. So that's definitely the easiest way to do it. So I'm all for that. And again, like, people definitely have to temper their expectations, so to speak. But it makes sense to me. I hope they can get, like I said, a little more for Severino. Severino's contract is in a situation where it's like, again, he keeps this up, he's opting out. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, because
does he have an opt-out?
I feel like he does, because I feel like a part of me is, if that's the case, I might just keep him for myself. You know what I mean? I think that starting pitching is just so hard to come by that if I have one at a reasonable deal.
He does not. Manaea has the opt-out.
Then why would I trade him?
So he would just be a full-on rental. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love Severino. I think Severino's done a great job.
So again, that's what I'm saying. So, like, since he's a 1-year deal, then I might as well just kind of trade him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's more so, like, if Severino had multiple years at a similar number to this, I'd keep him for myself if I'm not getting a great return. Because I think, like we talked about, since so much of this rotation is on short-term deals, like, you're going to have to rebuild it again. So it's like, if I can at least get one of them to kind of carry over into the next season, that'd be great. So, and hopefully Scott's back up here soon, and we'll see what happens with the other guys, with the other young pieces. And then, with Senga, like, that's the thing, is that, like, there's still a lot of things that need to be determined with the Mets overall as a total. And for me, the biggest one is Mark Vientos. we need to see what happens at the end of the season with him, because right now it looks great. 300 batting average. He has that OPS above 800. It looks great. It's not going to stay that way. I want to see how he evens out, how it balances out.
Very fair.
Is he a future piece? Is he a third baseman, first baseman? Like, that's my most important, because I need to know going forward. Like I said, do I need a third baseman? Do I need a first baseman? Do I need a second baseman? Do I need, I mean, like, in order to actually assess and start to actually make those moves and decide what to do with this guy, what to do with that guy, you need to know what you have internally. So my biggest thing this season is, how does Mark Vientos finish the season? Because now is the time. We've talked about so much. We've seen him a lot, for multiple years, but never the full-time playing time. So we still don't know what he is. Now that he has this golden opportunity where he's the third baseman, now we could finally say, okay, what is his role? Once we have that, then the next thing is the pitchers. So we'll see what happens with Senga, with Scott, with Sprout, with Tidwell. Then that's the next big piece. Are any of those guys good? Are all of them good? Or some of them good? Once we have that, it's like, okay, now we have the rotation. Like, once you kind of simplify it and you identify what your strengths are and what your building blocks are, now you know exactly what you have to target and what you got to look at and improve. So, and then at some point, maybe we see Acuna, whether that's outfield, infield, whatever, find out what's going on with him. You know what I mean? Like, they really have got to kind of decide, like, who's for real, who's not for real, and then that's going to change everything. Draft, free agency, trades, like, that's going to determine everything. So that's really going to be the big thing, is that, like, we'll play it out with what we got. If we get back in it, great. Let's see what happens. If we don't, we have to let as many young guys up here as possible to determine what kind of major league players are they, of the ones that are major league ready. We're not calling up everybody, but we want to see, like, who. We're not calling up Clifford for example. I mean, but, like, we're going to just see, like, who is major league ready and kind of go from there.
Basically, what we're saying is, last trade deadline, they traded everybody away. They said, let's just bring up Rafael Ortega. Let's bring up Jonathan Arauz. Let's bring up guys who are just fringe major league players. No, bring up Luis Angel Acuna. Let's see what he does. Bring up, I don't even know, somebody. Just bring up pieces that maybe you can evaluate for the future. Great, obviously. Beatty can come up too if he wants to. Maybe. I don't know. He's kind of in the solitude part. Don't bring back Ronnie Mauricio. Please don't, by any means. Just let him bring up Gilbert. Gilbert's got to get healthy first.
Yeah, he's got to get healthy first.
And
Jet too. And
Jet needs to get healthy first. I didn't see Jet making the majors at all, even if he was healthy this year. Gilbert was a possibility. And I think that they just need to get rid of the age. And, like, I don't really care about I really don't care about the returns that they get on the trade market, to be honest. I really don't care about that. I just want to see them get rid of the age, get rid of the aging pieces on this team, and then we see what we can evaluate, because I want to see, with no pressure, just, I want to see an entertaining rest of the season if they sell. Like, I want to see these young guys. I want to see the potential. I want to see that upside. I don't need to see another Rafael Ortega up here. I don't need to see Danny Mendick. I don't need to see those players. I don't need to see them. I need to see young guys with upside. I know they don't have many of them at the top levels, but what I'm saying is the Mets just need to see anybody that is a top prospect, anybody that is a prospect that's in the top, in the top 30 that is close to the majors, give them a chance. I want to see Tidwell. I want to see Sprout. I want to see even Hamill, even though he struggled. Vassell, I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest. I hope to see my man Bryce up here at one point, of course. And speaking of Bryce, I do want to get into the injury report. Then we'll do suds and duds. We'll get out of here. But in terms of the injury report, we only got two here. Kodai Senga, of course, like we said, he completed a 30-pitch-ish bullpen session on Wednesday afternoon. The Mets are expecting Senga to require 2 more bullpen sessions before he resumes to facing hitters in live BP. So I'm going to guess, if I make an estimate, at the pace that he's going, before the All-Star break, he will probably make a rehab assignment, but we won't see him till after the All-Star break. He most likely will be making about 4 or 5 rehab starts before he comes back. And again, that's just still on the pace. You might have another setback. Who knows? In terms of Bryce Montes de Oca, remember that guy that throws freaking gas, who's a mountain of a human being, 6'7", 270 pounds. Yeah, that guy. He is coming back from Tommy John surgery, his second Tommy John surgery in his career. Quite the story, as we all know. He made his first rehab appearance for Low A, Port St. Lucie, on Tuesday afternoon. He is still yet to make another appearance since. They're kind of just taking a little slower with him. Fastball was up to 98 miles an hour. Cutter, of course, which is more like a slider cutter hybrid type of pitch, we all know. He also had that up to 92. So the velocity is definitely progressing there. It's not as high as it used to be. But again, you got to take it slow with him because he's a big guy, of course. And big guys tend to get injured a lot. They're very injury prone. And in terms of other roster moves that we can talk about, I just want to say this. This I 100% agree with. I think at this point, you got to let it go. I know that he's going to be pitching the second game of the Padres series, which I don't get. I understand that Scott is not eligible to come back unless he's replacing an injured player, but I personally would just phantom IL Jose Quintana and just bring up Christian Scott, because
he could use some shoulder impingement.
Yeah, Quintana is obviously playing to a point where it looks like he's hurt because he has not been good whatsoever. So whatever, but I guess with, the whole Billy Epler situation with how they're breathing down their neck with the IL, they're not really trying to touch it. But in terms of when Scott gets up here, I am expecting Jose Quintana to be the casualty. I think that's going to happen, and I hope it does. And if it does, I'll be really, really proud to call David Stearns my president of baseball operations. Even though I'm a big fan of him already, I really do like the way he operates, even though it's going to take time. You want to show you want to show that you're no nonsense. Jose Quintana is the next to go, because you ain't going to get anything back for him.
And he's not yours either. You know what I mean? Like Stearns didn't even bring in Quintana, so he has no reason to be loyal to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not loyal to Quintana at all. I get he signed with the Mets as a international free agent when he was young. But again, that time is long gone. Oh my God, I just saw something extremely funny on Twitter, and I will be sharing it with Frank after this stream. Okay. Other than that, let's get to studs and duds, of course, everybody's favorite segment. One player that has played fairly well that we want to give props to in this series, one that has not played very well, and we want to completely tell them to step it up and stop being terrible. Okay, first starts with studs. Frank, what do you got for this series?
Yeah, for this series, I'm gonna have to take JD Martinez. That hit was just It was so big. It was the difference between winning the series and losing the series. They needed it. It would have been such an ugly loss. Again, I'm still not happy with how they won the game, but just the fact that they did win the game. You know what I mean? That would have been such a bad loss if they lost that one. So he really, really bailed out a lot of guys. Like I say, he bailed out Drew Smith. He bailed out the rest of the offense by just not showing up. So I give him a ton of credit, and he's, like we say, he's the one guy where it's like, if he wants to go opposite field, go opposite field. You want to swing first pitch, you
do whatever you want.
Like JD Martinez knows better than all these guys. That it's like, I'd be okay with him being the hitting coach and playing. You know what I mean? Just do what
he's getting on that pace, to be honest.
You know what I mean?
He is getting on that pace.
Do what he does. He is just he's just the model of consistency for such a long period of time with so many different organizations that I'm like, and I saw they showed in the dugout, it was sometime this week in the Marlins series, where it's like him and Alonso were at the top of the rail talking. Stay with him, Pete. Stay away from Chavez. Stay with him. Listen to what he's got to say. You know what I mean? That's just the way
with what we've heard in such a short amount of time that JD Martinez has been here. He's on that trajectory where he could be a hitting coach eventually, because he's such a student of the game in terms of hitting. I mean,
and he's a guy that was not so much a late bloomer, but he wasn't amazing right off the bat. He's a guy that when if he had his struggles, and then all of a sudden, he turned it on. He had the big thing with Arizona and everything, and then obviously the rest is history. So he's an interesting guy that you really could learn from. It's not, it's not, like use like an example, like when Larry Bird was a head coach of Indiana Pacers. Like, it's not always so simple. Like, I'm really talented, just be like me.
Yeah,
like,
what a relatable guy, Larry Bird.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But he was a coach. But I'm saying that like the
exactly.
guy who like actually had the struggles
and he hated it so much that he just quit. Like he just let up. He just nah, fuck this.
Like the people who actually had struggles and had to make adjustments and, like you said, be a student in the game, actually learn. Like those are the people turn into good coaches. So I think someone like JD Martinez is a guy that a lot can learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, we are not signing Jose Abreu. That is long gone for Daniel in the chat there. I apologize if you want him, but I think he's using crying, laughing emojis to determine that he's joking. Okay. My stud, I am going to give this one to Dedniel Nunez, because who else? I mean, this guy's just been so goddamn good for us, and there doesn't seem like any times of slowing down. Again, the usage is a little scary. I'm not going to lie. The multiple innings, it's a little scary for an arm like him. He's had injury history in the past, so I want them to slow it down a little bit, but he is an official member of the Mets bullpen. 100%. He is not going anywhere for the rest of the year. Tons of years of control. He ain't going anywhere. I'm not saying I'm ready to give him, $100 million like we gave to Diaz, but what I'm saying is he is a future piece to this bullpen, and he hasn't given us any reasons to prove us otherwise. So Dedniel Nunez has been fantastic. And, also shout out to Tyrone Taylor for that 4-hit game, because that was pretty good.
Definitely
he got off the Schneid.
And Sevy too. Sevy had another very good start.
Even
though like a lot of traffic, he got out of it, so
yeah. In terms of duds,
there's a lot to choose.
There are quite a few. What do you got?
So, oh God, it has to be. Oh my God, it's so tough. Like, there's a lot of guys I could choose from, but it's gonna have to be Jeff, only because he's a starting position player. And again, it's like you have Iglesias right there, and the fact that Iglesias just has to sit there and take it while he's the better option is not fair to him. It's very frustrating. So I would definitely say Jeff, even though there's a lot of other people that can be chosen.
Yeah, I'm going to go with someone I don't think I have ever put in the dud category, like ever. I don't think you ever will. I'm going to go with Brandon Nimmo. He just was not good in this series.
Yeah, it was he was a flat out zero.
He was just nothing. You just did nothing. And again, like we've said, I don't have worries about him long term, but in terms of the results, in terms of the series, just hasn't really. It wasn't a good series for him. You also can put Alonso there too. He had tons of opportunities with runners in scoring position, didn't cash him in. I'd love to put David Peterson into the fryer, but I think that there's been some other performances that haven't been as good. In terms of some other comments, what?
Drew Smith.
He goes without being said at this point.
He's just the automatic dud.
Yeah. But in terms of any other comments, guys, make sure to leave them out here. We'll give you guys a minute or something. But in terms of some closing remarks going into the Padres series, which starts off with Manaya?
Yes, against
pitching tonight
team.
Against his former team. And then you have Quintana.
Action.
Then you have Quintana, who should do fantastic against Manny Machado. Am I right? And then you also have McGill in the series finale. So that's an automatic win. No, I'm just joking. But as for the Mets going into this series, they got to keep it going. That's pretty much it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because while the Padres have been better lately, still not what they're supposed to be based off their talent on the roster, they're still much, much better than the Miami Marlins. They're going to be facing Dylan Cease on Sunday, so he's a guy that does match up tough with the Mets. They struggle against that type of pitcher, so I'm curious to see how the offense reacts to that. But overall, just in general, it's going to be a good test for a lot of the pitchers. Xander Bogaerts is out, but obviously you're going to be facing Luis Arraez, Fernando Tatis swinging a hot bat, Jurickson Profar is insanely hot. I was clamoring for him last year. He wasn't great last year, but this year he's amazing.
He was really bad last year. Yeah.
But this year he's definitely figured out. Now that he's back in San Diego, I just blame Colorado being inept. So that's what I'm going to go with for that. But obviously, like so you got Machado, you got Cronenworth. Like there's still a lot of talent on that San Diego roster. Just kind of seeing how they match up, and just overall more so kind of find those same things that we're talking about. Like, is the lineup going to be different every day? Like, are we going to see Bader 2 and 8, and this guy's over here and this guy's over there? Is Iglesias going to play more? Is Drew Smith going to stink and Ottavino going to stink, and I'm going to be yelling for Danny Young every day? Like, those are things I'm watching more so. Like, again, are we going with the best players, or are we going with the players with the highest contracts? So kind of finding out more of that is something that I'm going to be watching. And then I hope that, like we say, sooner rather than later, Scott is back.
Yeah, of course. In terms of this series coming up with the Padres, which will be starting in like 2 hours from here, you'll get Frank's post game as well. Of course, his thoughts. In terms of this series, if you're serious, get me 2 out of 3. If you're not serious of what I think you are, because you just only beat up on the lowly Marlins, then just go ahead and stink. To be honest, I mean, I don't care. I'm at wait and see mode again. You never know until the trade deadline. But all I can say is this stretch to the All-Star break, there's only 2 games that they're playing against guys with above 500 records. So if you want to make a move, you make it now, because it ain't going to happen after the All-Star break. It's not going to happen after the trade deadline. You got to do it right now. Not saying any of these teams are awful, but I'm saying is that these are teams that in the book you could possibly beat if you look like a competent baseball team. Just saying. That's how I kind of look at it. And listen, we're at home. So home field advantage. Home field advantage is huge, okay? Now, as for everybody here live, as for those of you listening or watching on Playbook, thank you for those of you who were here for the entire stream, who were here for a little bit. But other than that, we'll see you guys next time. I'm going to be going off to see the Brooklyn Cyclones play live today. Jonah Tong is on the mound, one of our high prospects. I'm excited for that. Hopefully the weather holds up. It will be, I hope I can have some fun, but because I think that, I'm going to skip the Mets for a day. And, obviously I'll still have my updates, but I'd like to see the younger guys. We want to see this team get younger, so we'll see the source from that. But other than that, for those of you who haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. Turn on the post notifications to know when we go live. We will have some more extra content of actual just videos that does come out, in the next few weeks. Those are in the works. Some stuff revolving around the draft and some prospects, stuff like that. I got some of that in the works right now. Next episode, we could have a guest. I'm hoping that this guest can come on because I feel like it's going to be a really fun time if he does. We'll see you guys next time for episode number 58. Let's go Mets. Peace out.